Start recording. Yes, start recording. Good morning, Wendy.
Good morning.
Welcome to the Money Move Show. It's great to have you. We had a fun weekend here in the great state of Tennessee with massive amounts of snow. It snowed more here than it has in the last 10 years combined, I think, over the last few weeks. We got another 5 or 6 inches. I'm looking at it right now. And trees down, snow covered roads, slushy roads, frozen ice roads. It's fun. But we're going to heat it up and talk about money. So did you guys get snow where you're at?
So I can look out and see the mountains are covered with snow, but I'm in the valley of Chattanooga and nothing. I mean, like we had like this much on the ground for about 10 minutes and that was it.
Okay. Well, I bet that's still pretty with the mountains and stuff like that. So that's awesome. You have to put a picture of that on social media or something. That's cool.
Yeah.
So what are we talking about today?
Credit.
Credit. Okay. So I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
No, it's fine. So we talked last week about kind of all the different stuff. We mentioned good credit versus bad credit in that conversation. I know we talked about credit scores and stuff like that in the past. We thought we'd bring that back up and talk about credit and how it can impact you positively or negatively and why you need credit to be successfully financially. So do me a favor. We're going to get started here in just a few seconds. Reach out to your friends, families, and all your buddies you want to help financially. Say, hey, Money Moves is about to start with John and Wendy. Get on here now, and we'll get started in a minute.
Okay, you just surprised me. That was so cool.
And we are back live with our movie theater style entry. So I love it. I love it.
That was coming. That was
Yeah.
so cool.
Yeah. So I thought we'd up our game a little bit in 2022. So I'm glad you liked it.
It was very cool. Very cool.
Good stuff. So we're talking about money today, and we're talking about moves you can make, and we're talking about credit and how it impacts your money moves. So what are some things that you've heard out there about having credit, or should you have credit? I mean, we've all heard it. So let's just kind of touch on that for a minute, Wendy.
Yeah. So, we talk about gurus a lot, so might as well bring them up here.
The
But
guru.
last week we talked about debt, good debt and bad debt, right? So now we're kind of digging more into the credit. And I, followed a guru who was like, you never use credit cards, you never finance anything, you never, right? And what I found was, as I grew up, that not having credit kind of sucks, right? So even I'm in a new place that I'm leasing right now. You can't lease a place without credit, right? Like you got to have credit. So anyway, so there's good credit, right? Getting good credit and doing it in a wise way, I think is important. And I think there's a lot of people out there, right, that have really bad credit and might need to know how to fix it. And then I think another thing we need to chat about is business credit.
Yeah.
Like we'll touch on it a little bit. We won't go into huge detail because I think that's its own show. But having credit in your business is important too for all the small business owners. So.
Yeah. No, it really is. I mean, and that's one of the things that in a perfect world, or maybe in the 1950s, I don't know, one or the other, right? When you were small town and everything was localized and, you knew everybody, think of Andy Griffith, right? Mayberry, RFD, whatever. And you walked down and talked to Clyde at the local barbershop, and you walked over to the bank and talked to, Thelma, right? And they knew who you were. That's how they made credit assessments. They got a good reputation in the town, whatever, this, that, or the other. That's not the world.
My favorite Christmas movie, by the way. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Right. We talked about that. It's a Wonderful Life, right? I forget the name of the bank or whatever that they ran, the savings and loan. But you went down and they knew you, right? And they worked with you and stuff like that. But that's not the world we live in anymore. Okay. Right. So the solutions that worked back then don't really work today. And really what those gurus are talking about, their heart's in the right place. But, when you pull back and look at the big scheme of things, they're giving bad information. Okay. What they're trying to say is don't use credit. All credit is bad. Don't use credit or debt on credit as a crutch, as something that you depend on you want to use it as a tool, right?
Mm.
And that's exactly what it is. Robert Kiyosaki talks a lot about, using OPM to make things happen and leverage, right? OPM stands for other people's money. He's talking about
Yeah.
the banks, the lending institutions, and things like that. But you also look at the whole point of what is it good for and what can you use it for. And if you're not using credit effectively, right? If you're not using credit effectively, you're really kind of tying one arm behind your back and trying to get ahead in life, whether it's from a financial standpoint or whether it's from, looking at trying to build something or things like that. And that can be a huge, huge problem. Okay. And you need it. I mean, you need it in today's world, because I don't know, if I'm the banker, I don't know who Wendy is, right? You come in and say, hey, I'd like to borrow money. What's the first thing I'm going to look at to determine whether you're credit worthy or not?
Right.
Credit score.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. And so,
like, most people aren't paying cash for cars, right?
No.
Should you? Maybe. Yeah, maybe. Right. But like, most people aren't. And one thing it really affects is your interest rate. Like,
yes,
you're going to pay a lot more for stuff with bad credit.
a lot more. And so exactly. It's all about, how much do you pay for something versus what I pay for something, and that's all determined and based on credit score, right? So you look at that, and it's one of those things that how do you control that? So we're going to talk a little bit about that today. But first, let's talk about when should you use credit versus when should you not use credit. I guess, how do you use credit effectively, and what would be a poor example of using credit? What do you think some of the good examples would be on credit?
Yeah, I mean,
or
I think
debt?
if we're talking personal, right? I think obviously financing a home. I think, reasonable car loan with if you can get really low interest. I think, we talked about this a little bit last week, but getting a credit card that you pay off in full every month to help build your credit. And like you said, when you're using other people's money to make money, it's a good way to use credit.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So you look at that, and those are some of the good ways where you're expanding in your business, you're adding a new, I was talking when we got on here that, hey, I think I'm going to get a new computer, stuff like that. Now, not that you wouldn't go out and pay cash for that, because the computer's not going to be a big amount of money. But if you're starting off and you don't have any income in a new business, the last thing you want to do is I just dropped $1,500 on a new laptop for my business, and then now I have no cash or anything for other things that I may need for that business. So it's all about that leverage and timing and making sure you can service the debt. But looking at how do I use that debt effectively, some of the things you laid out are exactly right. Now, some of the ways that you wouldn't want to use credit are going out with your friends and partying it up because you can't afford it. You didn't put money back in your budget or whatever, or going out and buying groceries with it and spending it. Now, for those of you out there that, again, are using it for the points and then you pay it off every month, I'm not talking to you. Okay. You're using the credit exactly the way you should be for the added benefits, but you're not paying any interest. So when I talk about using credit and bad credit, you're talking about that interest. Right. So, those are some of the things that you should think about. But what goes into determining whether or not I should have debt? Well, such and such said that all debt's bad. Such and such said that I should pay off my house, and, or, not have, I should pay cash for a car. Well, you think about that, a used car anymore is going to cost you somewhere between 20 and 30 grand. Okay. And there's not, I mean, that's an okay, good car. Not, you're not going out and buying a Lexus or something like that, unless it's super used. But, you look at that kind of stuff, that 30 grand that I just took out of my cash, all of a sudden I could have put a good down payment down, 5, 6, 7 grand, and had a low monthly payment for a short period of time. And most car notes now are anywhere from, depending on your credit, somewhere between 3 to 5% or lower. The last car I financed, I had 1.9.
Wow.
And so you look at that. Yeah. It's like, and I remember I was going to pay cash for it. And the guy across the counter from me looked at me and, he said, why would you do that when you can go out and the money's so cheap right now? And it is.
Yeah.
And you look at that, it's like, well, I got this thing and this little guy whispering in my ear, no, pay cash. And I got to take advantage and grow. Right. And that's really what you want to look at doing. At the end of the day, it's that pillow test. If you feel better, sleep better because you paid cash for a car, God bless you. That's what you need to do. But from a financial perspective, and that's what we're talking about here, money moves, wouldn't it be much smarter, and ask yourself this question, wouldn't it be much smarter to go out and take that difference in the money and go out and get a 6, 7, 8% return where that money's making money, and then make the lower car payments? That's, I think so. I don't know about you, Wendy, but I think so.
Yeah. I mean, it takes discipline, right? People have, but that's what our goal is, right? And the goal with what we're teaching is to get people making those good choices, creating good habits, and then making those conscious decisions that are they're wise financial decisions. Hey, I'm not going to throw 40 grand or 30 grand at this car right now. I'm going to do that down payment, take the extra 20, 30 and put it somewhere where it's going to grow at a faster rate. I mean, and that's what the wealthy people do.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what they do. I mean, it's turning around and growing that money, and how does it grow? So, you look at that's a key factor. Is number one, write this down. Number one, how am I going to use this credit? How am I going to use this debt? Am I going to use it for good, or am I going to use it for evil? Right? Kind of ask yourself that question, right? For you Star Wars fans out there, are you part of the rebellion? Are you part of the empire? Right? So you look at that, and it's one of those questions you've got to ask yourself. You've got to have an honest answer for yourself. Are you disciplined enough not to fall into the debt trap? And if you're not, then you can still use credit, but just get smaller limits and things like that to kind of control yourself. So that's question number one. Am I disciplined enough to do it? Number two is, what am I gonna use that credit for? Okay. And what I mean by that, I'm talking about the purpose of credit, because you set up credit for different types of things. Okay. Number one would be revolving credit. And we're going to talk a little about that in revolving credit or credit cards, meaning I put a balance on, I pay some off, I put some more on, I put some off, whereas a car is kind of a fixed in credit. I've got it for a period of years. I know what my payment is. I know what my fixed interest rate is, right? And I know in the end of 4 years or 5 years, that car or whatever the case may be, that purchase is going to be paid off, right? So those are different types of credit. And then you've got to, again, have that discipline payoff. Just on a side note, on cars, try to stick to 4 or 5 years on finance. 4 or 5 years. If you can go 3, even better. But now they're coming out with 72, 84 months for financing. If you're financing a car for 84 months,
you can't afford it.
You can't afford it. Yeah, you're focused on monthly payment.
Yeah.
And do me a favor, go out and add up what the difference. Now, some of them have 0% finance, so it wouldn't work like that. But most cars, if you finance it for 84 months, you're paying a little less, but you're paying much longer. Total of payments versus the higher payment for shorter. Total of payments. What do they equal up? And you'll see the difference you're paying just because you're looking at monthly payments. So I'll get off that soapbox. So looking at credit and score, why is that so important? I mean, we talked about that, but how do I know what my credit score is? What do you think, Wendy?
So I go 3 places, and it's all for free. So and it's so important, side note, to check your credit often, because I have found things on my credit report that were not mine. So that you can then write a letter and get them taken off. But so I use Credit Karma because it's free, it's easy to use, and it gives me the TransUnion and Equifax, right? Yeah. Scores. And it'll send me an email when my score changes or if my credit's been run. The other thing I use is Experian. That gives you more what they call the FICO, I think, score. Which I don't like because it's always lower. And then credit wise through my bank. So I have 3 different places that I am constantly aware of my credit and seeing it. And you guys, like I've swung my credit 100 points because I had really bad credit, like really bad. Partly because I didn't use it enough. Second part, because I had, in a troubled time when I was, not doing great starting a business, and I was late on payments and stuff. Right. So
we all go through that. So if that's you out there listening or watching, don't think you're alone. Okay. Don't think you're alone.
So I've grown my credit score over the last year over 100 points.
Nice.
Just by paying things on time, taking out a little bit more credit, right? Opening a credit card and paying it off every month and not ever going over, like just a little hack. Don't go over, like if you have a $2,000 credit limit, try and stay at 1,000 or less when you're charging on it. But I've been doing those simple things and making sure like anything bad on there that I've handled it. Or something that may have been reported that I handled quickly, asking for it to be removed. So little different hacks. But if you're not looking at it, just like anything, if you're not watching it, if you're not paying attention to it, then it's really hard to improve it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and that's exactly right. And going back to what you said, you raised your credit score, and so what that means is when you do need to use credit for personal items of your business, guess what? You're going to pay less
Right.
for X, Y, or Z than the next person coming in with a lower credit score because you're taking control of it. And this goes back to the money moves we talk about. We're trying to show you how to make money, how to save more money, how to grow your money, and how to keep your money. And this is part of that keeping your money, right? Because now Wendy is paying less interest on something than she would have before. So what does that mean? That means she gets to keep more of her money in her pocket. That's why it's so critical. That's why it's so important, right? And so those tools that you use now, I use CreditWise, right? That's Capital One. You don't have to have a Capital One account to use it. It's free. It's fantastic, and they actually give you little tips and pointers in there on how to improve your score, and it gives you scenarios. Well, what if I paid off this much more of my debt, or what if I had this card that I lowered the limit or increased the limit? And when you go out and get rid of credit cards, and that's some of the gurus tell you to do this, you're trashing your credit score.
Yeah.
Literally, when you pay it off and you close it, you're trashing your credit score because it's based on the number of accounts you have open, the type of accounts you have, how long the accounts you have open. When he was talking about the credit limit, you never want to go over 50%. If you can keep it below 25%, guess what? Your score is going to go up. And I think the scores, they start at 350 and they go all the way up to 800. Okay. And so ideally you want to be north of that 700 mark or 680 at least. That's kind of one of those cutoffs. But if your score is not there, don't just give up. Do something about it. Take action on it. Use Credit Karma. That's what Wendy was talking about, or CreditWise. You can use Experian, and it'll tap into, here's the things you need to do. And so what happens when you walk into a bank, or maybe you're buying a house right now, they're going to look at several factors, your debt to income, things like that. But the big thing they're going to look at is your credit score. So they'll pull all three of the major credit bureaus, right? And when you mentioned, Equifax, you mentioned Experian, and then TransUnion is the third one. And so typically what happens is they'll pull all three. They'll take out the highest one, they'll take out the lowest one, and whatever's in the middle, that's what they're going to use as your score. Okay. And then they'll also pull it again right before you close, especially on a home purchase, because they want to make sure you haven't added any credit lines, you haven't had a bunch of inquiries, because inquiries, when you go to the mall or whatever, and they're, oh yeah, hey, we'll give you this $10 coupon if you fill out a credit card application with us. Every time I go to the local sports store here, Academy, they always ask, hey, you can save 10% on your purchase today if you fill out a credit card application with us. Why do you think they do that? Because they want you to come in and start buying the stuff there. And it's so easy to use credit. And most people aren't disciplined enough like you are to pay that stuff off. Okay. So all those different factors go into it. And you can control that. And these tools, again, they're free. And they can help you do that. They can help you, keep that credit score up and running. But, those are just some of the things, kind of high level on what you can do. But, credit cards, things like that, they are great tools if you use them properly. Okay.
Yeah. And I wanted to go back to what you said about cutting or like closing the account. Like if you need to cut a card because you have a spending problem, cut the card. But we talked about this last month or last week. Don't close the account. And I made the mistake. That's part of what hurt my credit a lot too, is because I was going through one of those 8-week courses from one of the gurus, and I closed all the accounts.
Yep.
And it, like, my score went down like 40 points, like fast.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I had no idea that would happen. And so not closing those accounts, and the credit history, like how long you've had credit, is really a huge factor as well.
It is. It is.
So like, starting now, if you don't have credit, but starting and keeping that as clean as possible. And then there's also, I don't know many of these specific websites, but there's one out there. Maybe I'll research it and post it in the comments. But there's one out there that you can actually get like your utility bills and stuff, subscribe to this, where they report to the credit bureaus. So if you pay your bills on time, then it's sending that in to help you build your credit. Now, if you don't pay your bills on time, that's a problem, but so don't say that. But there are other options out there to help you build your credit outside of credit cards too.
Yeah. And it's important. I mean, because you never know when you're going to need it. And even if you don't use credit a lot, it's still important to have it available. You know, a situation may change, you know, going through life changes or whatever, you may need to make hey, I'm moving from one side of the country to the next, job relocation or whatever that's not covered by the, you know, maybe you're moving back out to be home with family or whatever the case. Those big expenses, if you don't have that credit, you know, it's going to tap into your emergency fund and everything else, which that's not really what it's designed to do. Whereas, you know, those unexpected expenses, you've got your emergency fund to fall back on, but it's always nice to have that credit available if you need it. Okay. But again, don't go out and use it for everyday expenses. Again, the points people, I'm not talking to you, but it's one of those things that having it available and being there as kind of a backup is great. Right. The other aspect about that is if you are trying to launch a business, you know, you're going to have some expenses, and wouldn't it be nice to be able to kind of spread that out over 2 or 3 months, as opposed, now I'm not condoning carrying balances, but for business purposes, you know, sometimes you do. And you know, 0%, same as cash. If I've got a big purchase, and well, I did this with my with Lowe's not too long ago, not to endorse them, but I had to get a new HVAC put on my house, right? And it was a big unit. It was $7,000. And that was like, man, I don't really want to just pay cash for that. And all of a sudden I'm tied up for that. I said, okay, what kind of deals do you have going on? 6 months, same as cash. Okay, well, what does that mean? Well, that means I don't pay any interest on their money. Again, OPM, other people's money. And I said, okay, what would that be divided by 5, not 6, but by 5? Because you always want to take a month off, because that first bill you get, a month's already gone, right? And so I had it paid off within 5 months. Yeah. And so instead of shelling out $7,000 that, you know, could have been used for something else, you know, I was shelling out 1,500 or whatever that adds up to over that period of time, 1,600, something like that. So that's where you start looking at it. But again, it comes back to that discipline. Okay.
I was really proud of myself because I did that with my tires. Yeah. And the old me would have been like, oops. And then I wind up going over the time frame and pay the interest. But I was super disciplined and I paid it off early. And it was great, you know, because the tires, I could have afforded it at that time, but I would have pulled it from my emergency fund. And this way I didn't have to pull it from my emergency fund. I just paid a portion down and then, paid it just in my regular bills and never touched my emergency fund.
Yeah.
So.
And that's a nice thing too, guys. And remember that if you've worked with us and you've heard us talking about the emergency fund and things like that, you know, that's one of those things that as you're coming up on that clock, if you will, for the 0% expiring, take it out of your emergency fund and pay the balance off. Yeah. Okay. That way you don't have to worry about the interest, but what you're doing is you're spreading that out and it's less of an impact to you financially. And you've still got, you know, your emergency fund intact if you've got a true emergency. Now, if you're not disciplined, and this is where most people fall into the trap, they go out, they spend the credit cards and they say, oh, because it was so painless, right? It was so painless. If I have $100 bill in my wallet, that thing's going to sit in there for a while because I'm not going to bust it. The minute I break it into smaller denominations, it's gone, right? Exactly. It goes, right? And so that's one of the things that, you know, you look at the credit cards, it makes it so easy because it's just swipe, or now you don't have to swipe. You just kind of hold it up and tap, right? Because they're making it as easy as possible for you to spend your money. So again, you've got to have that discipline. That's where a budget comes in. That's where monthly, you know, or bi-weekly checkups with your spouse, partner, significant other on where we at financially. And you do little checkups like that. It doesn't have to be a long conversation. It's 15 minutes. Where are we at? Okay. Did we get the balance paid off? Yep. We got it paid off. Boom. That way you can get your points. And I love points, right? You may be one of those, I don't know that I'm going to be using the points and I don't know that I'm going to have the discipline to pay it off. So I want the low interest rate. So shop around, find out what you need, watch the inquiries, do the shopping before you actually, you know, buy something. And you'll always, especially if you're buying a house, well, I can't give you an interest rate unless we pull credit. And they'll all tell you that, which is a crock, right? They can give you a range. It's okay. I think my credit score, because I've got it on my smart device, I've got my credit scores is at X because of I use CreditWise or Credit Karma. What would my interest rate be on that? Just give me a ballpark. I'm not looking for a commitment. Well, and then they'll tell you, okay, and then you can kind of budget it out and kind of back into it. Bankrate.com. They've got all kinds of good calculators and stuff out there. But do your research before you actually, just jump in and say, oh, okay, well, I get $10 coupon at X store because I fill out this credit card. Don't do that. Scorecard or store cards are probably the worst as far as interest rates go. And ask yourself, why do I need a store card if they take Visa or MasterCard? Right. So again, looking to do that stuff and look around for the lowest rate credit card, or if you want to do travel points. I love the Southwest card because I travel them a lot. So I love those points and I use it for my business. And it's a great way, if you're disciplined, going into the business side of what we're talking about, using that for business expenses and then pay it off every month, I get the points.
Yeah.
Right. I get the points that I can again use for travel for my business too. So let's kind of shift over that on that business and credit. So what are your thoughts on that, Wendy?
Yeah. So we were at a conference actually in December, and they were talking a little bit about business credit, and I had never really heard anyone break it down, but a couple of the different tips they gave, right? Because you want to build your credit in your business. So like if you have an LLC or a corporation, and it's not just your name, because right, of those bigger expenses, you can spread out over time and then they become tax. Oh, I disappeared for a second. Am I back?
There you go. You're back.
Okay. I want to do some investing and I need credit and I need that available, right, to be able to do that. So, or investing just in the growth of your business. So a couple of the tips they gave is like opening a FedEx or a UPS account that you charge to, and then you pay it off every single month. The other thing they said is Staples or Office Max card, or a line of, I guess, where they invoice you, right?
Yeah.
Invoice the business. So you place an order, you get an invoice, you pay it off. Those are all things to help build your business credit. Or like you need a new computer, right? Putting that on your business and financing the computer through Dell or whatever, and paying that off over time. Those are all small things that can help build your business credit. But the other thing that I learned is that when you mess up your business credit, it's really hard to recover. So to be really mindful of that.
Yeah.
Anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, it's important, especially as your business. You may have started off with a small sole proprietorship or whatever, just doing business. Hey, I'm just selling stuff on the side. As that grows, people start to look at, okay, I want to do an LLC or maybe a C Corp, S Corp, or whatever the case may be. Conversation for another day. But you want to have your business operating as its own entity. Okay, not just on paper, but in actuality, we've talked a little bit about commingling funds and things like that. Well, it's the same way with credit, right? You don't want to use a credit card for your business and for your personal stuff, because what happens is then you start blending everything together and you don't really know, is my business really making money, or does it seem like it, or what's going on, and how do I keep track of it, and things like that. So it's just as important, to start building that business credit for your business, right? And some of the tips that Wendy just gave, open up the FedEx account. That's simple. Go online, fill it out, and they'll maybe give you a $100 credit limit on it or whatever. It's not a big deal. I mean, a FedEx package, well, they're getting a little more expensive, but it's one of those things that you can use that, pay it off, use it, pay it off, and that establishes a reputation of your business, ABC, or Acme, whatever. They have a good reputation of paying off their bills on time. Going and getting a business credit card, not a credit card in your name that you use for the business. That's first step, but actually getting a business credit card for your business. I mean, it's just little things like that. And all of a sudden, when you go to do the next purchase and the next purchase, and then you start leveraging, use that word, leveraging OPM, other people's money, to build your business.
Yeah.
And that way you can pay it off over time. Because the number one reason businesses fail, and we're going to talk about this in episode 2, some of the challenges that businesses face. The number one challenge that causes business to go out of business is cash flow.
Right.
Because I've got cash coming in, especially if you're doing commercial deals. It may be 30, 60, 90 days before you actually get paid on that work that you did, right? Personal items, are a little more different, but it's one of those things that, you've got that credit to be able to help with those cash flow items, anticipating, okay, I know these bills are going to come in. I've spread out that cost of a big acquisition, whether it's computers or whatever the case may be. As you grow, you want to have that established. What you don't want to do is all of a sudden we're going to make a big growth and we have no business credit. Okay, because that's going to put brakes on everything quick.
Yep. Good stuff.
Yep.
And, there's some things I've invested in that I knew I would get a return on my money. It like certain coaching programs. or things that I knew, hey, if I do this, they're going to help me increase here, and it's going to pay for itself pretty quickly. I don't have the business credit built up, so I have to do all that from my, my business account. And like you said, it takes that cash flow away. Whereas if I had credit, I could just invest in that, pay itself off as I grow. So yeah, it's definitely a wise thing.
Yep. Well, everybody, that's kind of our time for today. So Wendy, thanks again. I love the backdrop. I love that brick look. So that's awesome. Again, it's credit. It's a tool. It's not good. It's not evil. It's all what you use it for. But if you use it effectively, right, it can make some major things happen for you in the right way. Okay. There is such a thing as bad credit. Okay. Or bad debt, excuse me. There's such a thing as bad credit too. If you have bad credit, you want to get that fixed, because you're paying more than you should be for stuff that, you may need for your business or personal lives or anything else. So hopefully this helped for you guys. Do me a favor, click that little subscribe button down below. Make sure you're sharing us with friends, and give us some comments. We want to hear your comments. We want to know if you've got some ideas on what you'd like to hear about with regards to money moves in your life, on what you can do. We'll do a show for you. Okay. Well, heck, who knows? We may even have you on the show and ask questions live. So definitely let us know. Reach out to Wendy at Wendy Lee Online. You can reach out to John C. at Black Swan Money. Follow us on social media, show the love, share the love, and share the videos. Talk to you later, everybody. Have a great weekend or a week, Wendy, and everybody else do the same.